there's kind of an accelerant to everything that's happening mental health wise, and that's what's happening with illegal drugs.
Yes.
And just what impact that is having. And especially, one of the things that I'm tracking as I'm reporting on, the border and migration that just keeps coming up over and over again is how cheap fentanyl and methamphetamines are becoming.
Yes.
We're seeing, something like a 75% drop in the price of meth
Yes.
over the last 20, 25 years. Really, we didn't see the introduction of fentanyl widespread into major cities like Phoenix until maybe 2017, 2018 time period. But by 2019, fentanyl is substantially cheaper already than heroin and displacing heroin use.
Yes.
And so we've got now a spot where fentanyl costs just extremely low amounts of money. This accelerant of illegal drugs.
Yes.
What have you seen that effect be within the mental health space, within the homelessness space?
Well, it's like a tornado of a drain, just a vicious cycle.
On some level, you got here right around at the beginning of COVID to Phoenix and started getting involved with doing...
I got here at the end of COVID.
Okay.
2023, April of 2023.
Okay.
So at that point, I'd just been ordained. And I was coming out here feeling like I was a Navy SEAL for Jesus. And I got to learn some really humbling lessons that my own experiences and faith were not sufficient. And I had to learn very quickly how to support those that I was working with professionally. And I was just like hitting the ground running, and all of my preparation completely insufficient for the issues.
Okay.
But with the illegal drug pandemic coming across our border, Arizona's the hotbed for that. The border's right here.
Right.
So initially, they're producing and taking across the border. And now they're producing across the border and bringing it back. So maybe what's best to explain it is kind of paint the picture of a typical addict, homeless, with access to illegal drugs. So whatever has led to their homelessness, whether they're a veteran that the VA system has failed, whether they're a domestic violence survivor still operating in trauma responses, it's so something hard happens and they do not yet have the skills to walk through a hard thing with good decisions and knowing where to go for services. Or say they're coming out of the judicial system. They made a bad decision at 16 years old. They were tried as an adult, which the frontal lobe of anyone doesn't develop fully until you're 25.
Right.
And so you cannot make an informed decision really until you're 25 is the science. But if there's any aspect of trauma in your childhood before that development, you have this lock of your own development that then becomes a perceptual filter in how you see the world and how you make decisions. And so whatever it is that leads to homelessness, lack of services and inability to know there are services, something horrendous in your life happens, you're in a place of deep grief and trying to figure out what to do next. How do you pick yourself up together? And so you end up homeless. You may not even be an addict. You might just be drinking on occasion. Alcohol may have been an escape for you on the weekends, but now you're homeless. That's the best case scenario in homelessness is you've only struggled with alcoholism. Now you're suddenly around pushers, other addicts, and they empathize with your situation. Their solution is addiction, and it takes the edge off. And initially, with any substance abuse issue, that's what it does, is it takes the edge off. I talk about addiction like I would domestic violence. Initially, there's that euphoria of I have just found all of the answers to all of my problems until you end up in a state with your addiction that you're like, how did I get here?
Right.
This isn't what I anticipated.
Yep.
This is not the decisions I was trying to end up. Like these were not the consequences I was trying to have with these decisions. I genuinely just wanted to get through something hard.
Yep.
And did not know how to.
Yep.
So
I'd gotten this temporary help
yes.
through
Yes.
substances.
Yes.
But in getting that temporary help, you know, on some level, I've made the future substantially worse because now I have this new kind of consuming need to consume this product, this substance regularly. Right.
And it's cheap. Initially, drugs, like in the 70s and 80s, cocaine was for the rich kids.
Yeah.
Cocaine was not a poor man's drug.
Right.
So in the 70s and 80s, you have the rich kids with parents that are distant in their careers, you know, the latchkey kids coming home, and cocaine's available to them. And they've got mom and dad enabling those decisions. But now we're looking at substance abuse completely differently. And it's not a rich man's luxury to escape. It's not a rich kid's luxury to escape. And you can get blues in different areas of the city cheaper than $1, blue being fentanyl.
Right.
I've heard of clients coming into some of the detox and crisis facilities that are smoking 30 to 50 fentanyl a day. That's more than most cigarette smokers smoke a cigarette a day.
That's incredible.
Like even with like cigarette smoking, anyone that smokes more than a pack a day, even among others that smoke cigarettes, are like, dude, buddy, you need to kind of slow down.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like,
You might want to watch that.
2 packs a day is
it's
40
excessive.
cigarettes.
Yeah.
And they're doing potentially 40 blue fentanyl pills
a day,
which for somebody who doesn't have a built-up tolerance for opioids, I mean, 1 or 2 could kill you, could overdose you.
The residue can kill you. You have first responders that don't know what that when we realized when the fentanyl epidemic began to get attention was when we then had first responders walking into fentanyl smoke, secondhand fentanyl smoke, overdosing. That was when police started carrying Narcan regularly in their pockets. Was for their partners. It became their bulletproof vest. Now they still used it and carried it for individuals because they are first responders. But you can, if you have no tolerance to opioids built up, you can overdose from skin contact, inhalation. So working in the low barrier shelters, there was twice that I was exposed to secondhand fentanyl smoke and had to be cleared medically and go to the ER to make sure I was okay. With fentanyl in particular, opioid addiction, opioid overdoses, it's a 2-hour window that the opioid is in their system from when they've ingested it, inhaled it, however they've taken it, that it could then perpetuate an overdose. There's a 2-hour window. It's not like you would see on TV where an IV user shoots up and then that does happen. But what we see is this also 2-hour window that it's like watching a guppy trying to breathe out of water. And if there's not someone right there with Narcan to reverse the effects, they are languishing, trying to breathe. I've seen that as a professional when that guppy breath starts and given Narcan and it reverses the effects immediately. But overdose is not always an instant death for someone. Okay.
So here, what we're looking at is a low barrier shelter.
I'm not sure if it currently still is a low barrier shelter.
Right.
It is. It was.
Was previously.
It was previously.
And you used to work here.
Yes.
Okay.
So half of the building is a crisis, and a third of the building is a crisis center. A third of the building is a psychiatric intake center. The other third, when I was employed here, was a low barrier congregate men's shelter. With bunk beds.
And so what precipitates, and we can keep walking, what precipitates someone coming into a low barrier shelter? Let's say, you know, they're homeless and they want to start the process of getting off the street. They don't know if they necessarily can or want to stop using, but they at least want to start the process. Is that where the low barrier shelter comes into play?
Yes.
Okay.
So the low barrier shelters come into play probably in the early 2000s. HUD, which is the funding for any of the housing vouchers, housing programs, homeless shelters, at the root of that is the federal HUD program.
Mm-hmm.
So HUD creates this housing first mentality. And in an ideal system, it works beautifully. You
Okay.
motivate someone, you're able to provide them housing. You have a peer that is sober and has a journey of recovery,
Okay.
case managing them in decisions.
Yes.
It was a great ideal.
Mm-hmm.
And then practical application came forward.
Okay.
And we started to realize, and
So
when I s-
housing first is, hey, we're not going to try and solve your addiction issues while you're still living on the street because that's too difficult. There's too many things that
could go
drag you
wrong.
back.
Let's give you some safety so you can have a journey of recovery.
Okay.
And initially what they saw was usually at 30 or 60 days into housing, an individual had that self-confidence in just having a house
Mm-hmm.
that they could make changes in their life and get free of addiction.
Mm-hmm.
The situations that we began seeing, there's not foster care for pets. There aren't rehab centers, residential rehab centers
I see.
that will allow you to bring your pet.
Okay.
And so, and that's just one of those. What if you have kids that you're trying to bring back into your life?
Yep.
Or you're working with the Department of Child Services?
Yep.
All of the kind of unideal situations that don't fit the cookie cutter mold of a solution.
Right. Okay. Okay. And we're shade hopping here
Yes.
because it's brutally hot.
It is. It'll cool off about December.
Yeah.
Phoenix, welcome to the desert.
Okay. So they're homeless and just kind of precipitating this. I spent a whole day basically out on the street with a homeless man who was also, not a chronic or maybe even super habitually methamphetamine using, but he definitely did use. And I spent a whole day with him and just, what's the cadence of life for somebody who's downtown Phoenix, who's living on the street? What does this look like? And I tell you, it was absolutely eye-opening.
Sure.
So somebody like Bobby,
Yeah.
who I spent the day with, if he wanted to start the process of getting off the street,
Mm-hmm.
didn't necessarily want to go to maybe one of the super faith-based organizations, but wanted to get into a low barrier shelter, how would he wind up in a place like this?
Well, one would be going to one of the crisis facilities and asking for help and getting a referral.
Okay.
Another would be having contact with an outreach team.
Okay.
So different organizations have outreach teams that they use, and they go into the community. And so the municipality, wherever they are, will send a referral. Hey, we're noticing an encampment, or we're noticing a higher percentage visually of homeless individuals, and we need you to go outreach them.
Okay.
And so then an outreach worker will go and talk to them. And there's a way to talk to people where you ask them questions.
Yeah.
And you bring forth their story. And in them hearing their own story, it adjusts the neural pathways, and hopefully they have a moment of clarity in hearing their own story.
Mm-hmm.
That they're like, oh, I need to make some different decisions. And then the outreach team knows what services are available, begins offering services.
Yeah.
So from that outreach team, they would provide a referral. They would try and get them connected to services.
Mm-hmm.
In Arizona, they have the Human Services Campus. They just changed the name. It had been CAS before. It was where the zone was built around in the massive encampments.
Bobby and I went down there. So,
Right,
yes.
so there is a central point for anyone needing homeless services
Okay.
to go to. One of the issues you run into, again, is trying to create a cookie cutter answer for everyone and not responsible flexibility.
Mm-hmm.
Because if you're irresponsible with your flexibility, you enable people to stay in the issue instead of better themselves.
Forcing them to get to some level of behavior or bar
just
causes potential
yeah.
unnecessary barriers.
Yeah.
To be able to try and get over.
Well, it's kind of like you can't help everyone because not everyone's ready for help. If you help someone too soon, they won't make permanent changes.
Okay.
But if you're not there to help them in that moment of clarity when they are ready to make changes. Okay. And so that's the two issues of the system, is not being available too quickly, or not being available after commitment is made of the system saying, we'll help you get out of this situation.
Yep.
These are the anticipated behaviors we have with you.
Yep.
We'll walk you through this, And so what in this type of a situation with a low barrier shelter, they do not require that they're sober.
Right. Okay.
They're not allowed to use on site. They cannot have paraphernalia on site.
Okay.
And the goal of that is to help them start wanting to be sober. Hey, here's a roof. Here's some safety. When you're in an active trauma dynamic of any type, you don't want to admit that it's happening. It's that ingrained denial pattern. And so the drugs allow you to turn off the pain of either what's ever happened to you before. They also provide this massive adrenaline rush of the dopamine.
Right.
That it's like, oh, I can get through this and I'm going to be okay. And so it alters the brain chemistry to where you're lying to yourself about the reality of your situation, you know? And so in the low barrier shelters, they are appropriate, but we have to know when are they appropriate. And we have to have the support from the government in funding it, but we also need support from the community.
Yeah.
And you know, those are not easy questions to have an answer for. You could talk all day long about the problems. What are the answers to those deeper level issues within our country right now?
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. So one other direction that people could take is maybe to go to one of the more faith-based oriented organizations that do require sobriety.
Yes.
And do require, like, they'll piss test you, you know, make sure that there's nothing in your system before they even take you in.
You have to have already started some aspect of betterment.
Okay. And is there a place for both, or is that too high of a barrier for pretty much everybody, and so that becomes problematic?
If you sincerely want to make changes in your life, there's not a glass ceiling. But when we have a system to help people, and then we make it harder for them that they're helping, like the level of the decisions I had to make, the church could not help me with. I experienced a lot of in my own journey, a lot of very poorly informed individuals with a sincere desire to help women like me that then could not manage their own emotions of realizing the severity of the issues that I needed help with. And so then a lack of emotional intelligence in their part led to perpetuation of, I'll say, broken relational patterns of control and leave it at that, but just severe circumstances. And so there is an aspect of resilience that you can choose to get through anything. That should not be everyone's story. So while that innate ability of human resilience is available to all of us,
Right.
it's that easy to know, to think for just a moment, I could go back for just one night and have a little relief and start over in the morning. And that is the very dangerous place of overdose that many addicts find themselves in.
I see.
Is their tolerance has come down.
Yep.
And so they go back thinking it's going to be for one night and that's it.
Yeah.
They don't have a tolerance anymore, and then they overdose.
Yeah.
Or, you know, when you're in that level of society and kind of bottom of the barrel, you don't know who else is going to be around when you're using. So where the criminal justice system tried to get harder in the war on drugs by allowing everyone to endure the consequences of one person's decision. So say someone's killed in a drug house, right? Anyone in that drug house is charged with the manslaughter, murder, homicide, anyone present. Okay. So where the war on drugs tried to intensify consequences to deter people, what actually ended up happening was then we see an escalation in violence and statistics, because then everyone's charged as if they're the ones that pulled the trigger or had the knife or the baseball bat. Okay. And so,
okay. Interesting. Okay. So going through kind of either an outreach team or an intake center, then getting a referral to a low barrier shelter like this, and then they wind up coming into contact with you.
Yes.
As a peer support specialist, and then eventually you wound up becoming an assistant manager, supervisor of one of them. So the experiences then that you're having with these folks who are coming off of the streets, what happens if, you know, there's addiction, there's homelessness, but then there's also potential mental illness.
Yes.
What happens in those types of circumstances when the mental illness starts to surface and there's disruption and that kind of thing?
Well, when anyone coming out of addiction, there's certain phases in the recovery process where your emotions connect.
Mm-hmm.
So usually around 90 days to 6 months sober, some people in recovery call it the pink cloud, where suddenly your brain chemistry begins to level out. You've been abstinent long enough, and it's like this euphoric, like, wow, look at my life today, and it's so much better than when I was nearly dead or in jail or whatever the events were 6 months ago. Around 12 months to 18 months in recovery, free of addiction, you have a similar experience, but then it's like, holy crap, all of the things before I ever, as an adult, began to choose addiction. And you start looking at broken family patterns and broken homes and parental abandonment and really deep issues. And then you're learning to walk through a grieving process in recovering from trauma before addiction.
Mm-hmm.
And so if there's mental health issues as well, how we look at mental health, the symptomology is behaviors, right? So is there an excess of behaviors when there's an intense emotion? Now there's the brain chemistry to explain that. There's the brain neuroscience that can explain that. But at the base of it is there an excessive behavior tied to, and this is a very like basic explanation, but is there an extreme behavior pattern tied to an extreme emotional experience where there's a lack of coping skills?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So the goal of a mental health professional should not be to find the right medication to manage the symptoms. It needs to be a combination of life skills, support, medication, and again, it's where there's a lack of cohesion in the system.
Mm-hmm.
So then we began seeing several years ago the integrated healthcare model for the mental health.
Okay.
So that's where there's primary care available, some specialist available, psychiatry available, counseling available.
Yeah.
And then to address the massive cause of an issue, you have a team approach of different professionals coming together to provide medical care, psychiatric care, counseling, and a case management perspective. We're seeing that same attitude in the medical field with the public health initiatives and the different medical universities creating schools of public health, where we're looking at health disparity or health inequality and recognizing where access to care sets up a disadvantaged populace. When you look at the faith-based issues, you have genuinely, frequently, incredibly good-hearted individuals that recognize that in some capacity, they have not experienced what others have.
Mm-hmm.
When you get into that level of helping the community, there's massive growing pains of realizing the severity of the issues. And if you've not experienced those issues and then you don't have the support around you to learn how to deal with your own deeper level emotions from a place of compassion and empathy, what you don't realize you begin doing then is dealing with your emotions and wanting to help them. And that is where sympathy comes in instead of compassion. Sympathy, when you look at the emotional research, which is mostly done in corporate America for a healthy leadership model, but when you look at the emotional research, sympathy is an aspect of selfishness. I need to feel better about your situation, so let me help you. Compassion, especially if you look at compassion biblically, it is an understanding of you are where you are. You don't have to stay there. And it's a let me sit down next to you for a minute and help you find a way out of this. And it's allowing then their journey of betterment without producing shame, without having judgment or condemnation. I think with the plethitude of issues in our country over the years, and where we desperately want the right politician to have an answer and the answers that we want to hear in the issues. And the community has to respond to these issues. And so we need the faith-based models, but they also need support from this type of infrastructure where it may not be people of their same faith, but have a genuine heart to help their neighbor. And they're the good Samaritans of our society. And so at the base of it, again, comes down to how can we as a community respond to these issues? And the first is we have to start talking about the acknowledgement of there's some really broken places that we have to respond to again as a community.